Good morning, everybody. Welcome into the Live and Learn podcast. It is Friday, April the 18th. Happy Good Friday to everyone who celebrates Easter, I guess. It is Easter weekend, and it is also the start of the Stanley Cup and the NBA playoffs. Both kick off tomorrow. It's truly one of the best times of the year. You just had the Masters. You got both NBA and NHL playoffs. You got the NFL draft on Thursday. We'll talk about that more next week. So that's always awesome, the NFL draft. But today's show will primarily be about the NHL. The first round, to me, is the best hockey can get. You have 8 series, all of which can be, sometimes are always interesting. So many games going on at once. You're trying to track everything. If you have a favorite team, obviously they take precedent, but if you're someone like me, you're flipping over, watching everything. And to me, it's the best. As the playoffs go on, there's more injuries, there's more days off, and then now the playoffs end in late June, early July. But the first round, this is as good as it gets. And today we're going to go through every series. We're going to talk about key matchups. We're going to talk about what to look out for with the playoffs beginning tomorrow night between the Winnipeg Jets and the St. Louis Blues. Well, let's start off with the series that really, I used to be a Leaf fan. When I think of good times being a Leaf fan in my youth, there weren't many, but late 1999 to 2004, and I was very young, but I do remember some of these games. That was the best because it seemed that Toronto and Ottawa would play every year. And Toronto got the better end of every one of those meetings. Ottawa has never beaten Toronto in a playoff series in the history of the league. Matt Sundin, the Muskoka Five, always taking down Daniel Alfredsson, Wade Redden, and the crew. Now, the Senators did get to a Stanley Cup final in 2007 with primarily the same group minus Patrick Lalime, who always seemed to be the biggest issue for the Senators in those early 2000s. But for the first time since 2004, it's Senators-Leafs Battle of Ontario. In the regular season, Ottawa beat Toronto 3 times. Now, doesn't mean a thing to me. Regular season was regular season. It's a blank slate, pardon me, and everything resets. Now, if you're an Ottawa fan and you want to take some confidence about that going in, have at it. I don't view it the same way. But, this series is interesting for a multitude of reasons. The Leafs will always get the most pub. They'll always get the most talk. But they've had a great season. Nobody can deny that. I think a lot of the discord, because and what I mean by discord is we're talking about people that are actually good at covering the sport, and I'll throw my hat into the proverbial ring there, even though I don't do it for a living. You hear positives, you hear, ass kissing from certain people because that's what they're, paid to do. But Toronto had a great season. This is only the 3rd time since the league expanded to this playoff format that the Leafs have won a division title. And quite honestly, it's only the 2nd time because they won the Canadian division in 2021 or 20, whatever it was, the bubble. And that whole season was just so much of a shit show in their divisional format. It was stupid anyway. But They won it that year, the Fugazi. They win it for real this time. They won the Atlantic Division. They won the second hardest division in the league, in my humble opinion, Central being the most difficult. And, they've had their hurdles this year. Austin Matthews hasn't been that great of a player. He's been average. He's been hurt a lot of games. I think he, played a lot like Artemi Panarin, where you're wondering if he's going to need a shower or if he's just going to leave the game with the suit on and head home. You had the Mitch Marner drama with his contract, trying to trade him at the trade deadline for Mikko Rantanen. That fell through. What's he going to want in a contract? Leaf fans turning against him because, God forbid, somebody wants to make a buck. And, John Tavares, stripped of the captaincy. Pajama Boy, last year of his deal. Oh my God, they got to keep him. No, they got to let him go. I mean, what are they going to do? Who cares? But they overcame all of this. They brought in Craig Berube, a Stanley Cup winning coach, a guy who's been there, done that with the St. Louis Blues, a guy who changed the system for sure. For large chunks of the season, got his team to buy into his style, a style that I don't think everybody loved, especially highly skilled players, but they did it. And they're in first place. It's felt like a year of destiny for the Leafs, and I've said this from the beginning. They should win the division. I'm not surprised. I predicted they would. They should win this first round series. Will they? We'll get to that. They are a very good team with a lot of talent, with a lot of things going for them. So, whatever happens, this is a really good team, and we should be aware of that. Winning the division, absolutely an accomplishment. You can give it a slow clap. Is it that surprising? No, they should. If you think about who they're competing with. Tampa, really better season than I thought they'd have, quite frankly. They've been to 3 Cup finals. They're still trying to piece it together, trying to remain competitive. Toronto's trying to do what Tampa's done. Florida doesn't finish first. Who could have seen that coming? Beat up team, back-to-back Stanley Cup finals, having to play 2 extra months than Toronto for the last many years. What regular season is going to matter more for? Toronto, because that's been their season. It ends pretty quickly in April, typically. Then you have Ottawa. First playoff appearance since 2017. 2017, they got to the conference final. They lost in overtime, double overtime, pardon me. And it's been a free fall ever since. Good teams, good players can never get over the top. New coaches, new executives, new draft picks. Travis Green comes in. Hard style, similar to Berube. Asks a lot out of his best players. You see a career year from Batherson. You see a great season from Timmy Stützle, Shane Pinto, Jake Sanderson. Thomas Chabot had the best season of his career after a couple of down years. And a pretty good team D, all in all. And when available, Linus Ullmark was very good down the stretch, which he wasn't available all year long either. Ottawa is coming into this series with nothing to lose. They've made the playoffs. They've checked the proverbial box. But they're not going to be happy with just making the playoffs. Nobody is. You have an ultra competitor in Brady Tkachuk who wants success, who wants what his brother won last year, and that's Lord Stanley. You just have a bunch of guys that I think have a chip on their shoulder. Dylan Cousins comes over from Buffalo. His first playoffs. Tkachuk, Stützle, Pinto, Gregg, Gaudette, Batherson, all in their first Shabbat. Sanderson, Cleveland, all rookies to the Stanley Cup playoffs. All guys. They're going to have to learn on the fly what it's like. Interesting. Ottawa's a fast team. Hard on the forecheck and can make things difficult. They have a lot of greasy players on their team. David Perron, not afraid to be dirty, greasy, however you want to define it. Pinto, Ridley Gregg, certainly. Nick Cousins, one of the bigger rats in the league. Tkachuk's a moose on skates. A team that will get under your skin. A team that will press you. This will not be a ringette series for the Toronto Maple Leafs. I think if you look overall, I think the Toronto Maple Leafs have a better forward crew than Ottawa. Just top end of Matthews, Marner, Nylander. I don't think the way that Brady Tkachuk's currently playing in his health status, I don't believe there's anybody on Ottawa that's better than the three guys I just named. Talking about Matthews, who's 400 goals in his career, Rocket Richards, Mitch Marner, who had just had his first 100-point season, an elite winger, 200-foot guy, does it all, and Bill Nylander, who's a multiple-time 40-goal scorer. I mean, to me, that's not a hot take. That's just, a fact. And the way he's currently going, Matthew Nyes is elevating into better than anybody on Ottawa as well. And I get it. Tim Stützle, I like Tim Stützle. I think he's a good player. But he's inconsistent, and he's a bit petulant sometimes, and he can fall out of games. But then again, in the playoffs, so can Toronto's guys, so they might have something in common there. But you see Nyes, you see Bobby McMahon, Domi, Yarncroke. Does Nick Robertson play game one? Probably. Little Nicky, as I like to call him. I like the Leafs forward depth in the way that they're going currently. Overall in the defense, very close. Toronto this year has played great team defense. Chris Tanev is the human eraser when it comes to blocking shots, just being in the right place at the right time. Ekman Larson, solid year, ups and downs, but overall very good. Same with Jake McCabe. Morgan Riley has been, piss poor, but that's okay. Brandon Carlo struggled at the beginning, settled in, playing some good hockey, and then Simon Benoit. He's your 6D. He's not going to be great, but he's fine for a 6 defenseman playing, 12 minutes a night. I think Ottawa's defense overall is better because I think Sanderson and Shabbat are better than anybody on the Leafs when it comes to the overall defenseman. But Toronto's comfortable. And their defense is very strong. They don't have an alpha. But they really don't need one. This reminds me of the Pittsburgh Penguins team without Chris Letang when they won the Cup. They were a group. They don't put up a lot of points from the back end, but they play hard. They know their spots, and they make it work. Goaltending. Linus Ullmark's won a Vezina. But I wouldn't say that the Boston Bruins were ever comfortable with him in the Stanley Cup playoffs. He was benched in 2 different series, including one against the Toronto Maple Leafs last year, where Swayman had to come in and save the day. Boston chose Swayman over Ullmark. Now, was that the right choice? Ullmark's in the playoffs this year. Swayman's on a Boston team that is going nowhere fast. I'd still take Swayman, but Ullmark's a fine goalie. Toronto side, you have Stolarz/Wall. I believe they're going to start Anthony Stolarz. He's been fantastic over the last month. He's played mop-up duty in a playoff game, but he's never had a start. He's been a backup goalie his whole career. He won a Stanley Cup last year. But he's a backup goaltender trying to become a starter-ish in a tandem. Toronto, I think, feels comfortable that they have 2 guys that they could go to, Stolarz or Wall. I personally hate that feeling because the old saying, if you have 2 quarterbacks, you don't really have one. I think the same can be said when it comes to goalies. If it's Stolarz sucks game 1, Wall goes game 2, then you really don't have a number 1 goalie and you don't have that much stability. So that's a question that I want to watch. If and when the Maple Leafs lose a game in the playoffs, how quick do you go to the next guy? That's something that's interesting. But I think both teams have goaltenders that you go, do I trust him? Will he show up? I don't think it's a definitive yes either way. Now, Ottawa doesn't have a choice. It's Ullmark or bust. They're not going to Anton Forsberg. Toronto at least has the option. But that's an interesting question. Where they decide to go. Other big question for me. Toronto's had talented teams. Toronto's been a favorite in almost every series that they played in the last number of years. Favorite against Montreal, favorite against Columbus, favorite against Florida a couple years ago. Favorite against Boston last year. We're talking betting here. And yet they lost them all. Why? You could say a breakdown from Morgan Riley or Mitch Marner on that play. Okay? That's a simple solution to go, that's why we lost game 7. But they lost the game 2-1. To me, the Maple Leafs have lost so many series because they don't score ugly goals. They don't get to the paint area. They don't score ugly goals. Braden Point has scored a lot of goals in the playoffs. They're never pretty. Foot away from the net, finds a way to put it home. He scored 13 one year. Sometimes it's got to be dirty. It's not going to be a flash thing. And can they get it done? That's my question. Can they score ugly goals continuously? I don't know. A lot's got to go right for Ottawa to win this series. Can it? Absolutely. This is a wide open East. Wide open. Because there's no great team. Toronto's a good team. Absolutely. Are they great? No. They have their flaws. Same with the teams that we'll get to. I think this is going to be a physical affair. The first couple games are going to be fascinating to see how it's officiated, to see how far these teams want to go, how physical Toronto's going to be. Will they engage in it? Will they be pushed off pucks like in past years? Is this the last playoff series for Mitch Marner in a Leafs uniform? Is this the last playoff series for John Tavares in a Leafs uniform? I don't think it will be, because I think Toronto's going to win this series. I have Toronto beating Ottawa in 6 games, moving on to the second round for the first time in a little bit. Fun series, physical series, but Toronto's the better team. This team is different from past years. This team has all the parts to go very far. They have to put it together. The Leafs could win the Cup this year. They could be out in the first round, but could they win the Cup? Yes. In past years, people said that, and it wasn't true. They weren't beating Tampa years ago. They just weren't. I don't care if they would have beaten Boston. They would have lost the same number of games, 5 games, to Florida. Because Florida's just better. So it's hyperbolic to say that. And this year, can they? Yes. I'll even go as far to say this. Regardless of who they play, if Toronto wins the first round, regardless of who they play in the second round, Tampa or Florida, they will be the betting favorite. And courtesy of our friends over at FanDuel, Toronto minus 192 to beat the Senators. You have Ottawa at plus 158. I'm leaning Toronto, so I would take the Leafs minus 192 in that series. Let's move on. We'll go east to west. That's fun. We'll do that. All right. The Montreal Canadiens won on Wednesday night in the Bell Center to punch their ticket to the playoffs for the first time since they got there in the bubble in 2020. Awesome moment. Actual fans, shout out Toronto, at the Bell Center, the emotion, the feeling. Nick Suzuki has been captain clutch all year long. Jake Evans, who they re-signed, gets the empty netter. Awesome moment. I would say Montreal ahead of schedule, making it to the playoffs, doing what Ottawa hasn't been able to do for like 6 years, is just make the playoffs in an Eastern Conference that's been shiitake for a while. So kudos to them, and also kudos to Columbus on this. They didn't get in, but hell of a season. All that happened to them. I like what they're doing down there. They got good young players. Dean Evison, good coach, scary behind the bench. Good on Columbus. They'll make the playoffs here soon. But Montreal gets in, and they draw the Washington Capitals, the top team in the Eastern Conference. Now, what's this going to be? I have 2 analogies to this series, and they both involve Washington and some Montreal. In 2008-2009, you had Washington play Montreal. Washington was the 1 seed. Montreal was the 8 seed. Washington, massive favorite, going up against Carey Price and the Montreal Canadiens. And Montreal beat Washington. Massive upset. This was right in the mix of Ovi's never going to win. Ovi sucks. What's he even doing? Shut it. And Montreal went on to the conference final that year. They lost to the Rangers, but they pull off the upset. So that's what you could be looking at. Or is this the series where in 2016, the upstart Toronto Maple Leafs made the playoffs for the first time since 2004, played Washington and lost in 6 games, but they played hard. A number of games went to overtime, and they haven't missed the playoffs since. So it was a start of them becoming relevant again, them becoming a team that is constantly in the playoffs. So those are my 2 possibilities when it comes to this series. Washington's had a great season. Ovechkin breaks the record. Ended up with 44 goals on the season. Dylan Strome, career highs. Tom Wilson, over 30 goals. Logan Thompson, career season and gets an extension. Jacob Chychrun gets a big deal. And every move they made seemed to work. Rasmus Sandin didn't work in Toronto, has been a decent fit, pretty good fit in Washington. You got Ovi, Strome, Protas has been phenomenal. And his brother's been awesome for the Windsor Spitfires, who's a Washington pick who will likely be playing pro next year. Connor McMichael, career year. Then you add a guy like Ryan Leonard, who played at Boston College, joins the mix, was voted top forward at the World Juniors. So they got a hell of a squad. They got a coach that's, I think it's either him or it's going to be, they'll give it to some coach, maybe Marty St. Louis, like a coach that you don't expect to make the playoffs, to win Coach of the Year. But it easily could be Spencer Carberry for the job he did. Also could be the one in Winnipeg, but remains to be seen. Awards are after the season, so nobody will care. But Washington is a heavy favorite. They got balance. They got physical players. A 39-year-old Ovechkin that won't quit. And then you got Montreal. They shouldn't be here. You know, that's the thought process. What are they still doing here? Why are they still in the mix? Lane Hudson tied Larry Murphy for most points by a rookie defenseman in league history. He's going to win Rookie of the Year. Caden Gooley missed a lot of time, but he's healthy. I like him. Matheson, really solid season. Third line of Anderson, Christian Dvorak, Brendan Gallagher awoke something in this team. You have Demidov coming over. He's riding the wave of momentum. Line, Evans, Slafkovsky, and then Suzuki, as I mentioned, who's just been their bread and butter. Whatever they need, he provides it for them. This is going to be interesting. It's not a situation where Montreal has zero chance, because I think anybody can beat anybody this year, minus maybe one series that we will talk about. But could Montreal give Washington some problems? Yes. I think they need scoring from every one of their lines. I think they need their third line to continue to be very good, to go up against, the Majnapanis, the Duhaimes, the Ehlers of the world, and be better than those lines. Outperform that line, basically. If they can do that, they can stay in it. They need Montembeault to be really good. Montembeault, Logan Thompson, 2 guys that have very little playoff experience. two guys that are unproven that will have to show that they can do it. We're not sure yet. Marty St. Louis, Spencer Carberry. Carberry's got 4 games coaching the playoffs. He was swept last year in the first round by the New York Rangers. In the year they had to even get to this point, to be first in the East, is incredible. Ovi breaking the record the way it all went perfect. I still look at this team and I have questions about it. They absolutely can be had. They played in a Metropolitan division that was the worst division in hockey. Getting to play the Phillies and the Pittsburghs and the New York Islanders, the Rangers of the world all season long certainly helps you. Helps you boost your stats. They were 2-1 against Montreal in the regular season. I think this is an awesome experience for Montreal. They can build on this. They're going to get home playoff games. That's amazing. I think they're going to compete like the Leafs did in 2016. First playoff experience in a long time. First playoff experience for a lot of these guys. I don't think it'll be a shellacking. But Washington just has too many pieces for Montreal to win this, to win 4 out of 7. Keep it close, absolutely. But I have Washington beating the Montreal Canadiens in 6 games, advancing to the second round of the Stanley Cup Playoffs. But an awesome season for Montreal. And I think if they're going to look in the mirror and go, awesome, we made the playoffs. Awesome, we saw development. Suzuki, 89 points, career high. Caulfield, career high in goals and in points. Lane Hudson, we have a star here. Demidov, potentially a star. Too early to say if he's going to be one. He was great in the K. But we got contracts we'd love to get out of here. Gallagher, even one of Anderson or Dvorak, probably not in the long-term future plans of the Montreal Canadiens. But we still made the playoffs with these guys that we don't think will be on the team when we're any good. Cheers to that. That's a positive. But Washington in 6. Okay. Let's head to Florida, where we get the Battle of Florida. Tampa Bay, Florida. They met in the first round last year. Florida beat them in 5 games. It was really a shellacking, and it started Florida's run to the Stanley Cup final and ultimately winning it all. This is by far for me the toughest series to handicap, because who are the Florida Panthers? We know they're champions. We know that they're very competitive. At their best, I think they can go on another prolonged run and potentially win another Stanley Cup. At their best. But in this series, Aaron Ekblad will not play until Game 3. He's still serving a suspension for performance-enhancing drugs. Matthew Tkachuk has not played since February, basically. You got a banged-up Sam Bennett going into the playoffs, contract year. Banged-up Sasha Barkov. A defense that isn't as good as it was last year. I love Forsling. Seth Jones has been good. Mikula, very good. But then you Kulikov, Nate Schmidt. They're missing, the Ekman Larson, some of the horses that they had last year. It's not the same group, certainly. Then you have Tampa, who, kudos to them. Sure, they're not in the Stanley Cup final anymore, but they continue to make the playoffs. They didn't have to fire a coach. They didn't have to move out any of their superstars, really. They lost key pieces, but Kucherov's still there, Point's still there, Hedman's still there. They let Stamkos walk, which was the correct decision because Jake Gensel had a phenomenal season with the Lightning. Nikita Kucherov won the Art Ross Trophy. He'll be an MVP finalist, and he continues to be undervalued somehow by the league. They bring back Ryan McDonough into the fold, back from Nashville. And you see the progression from guys like Brandon Hagel, Cirelli, Mitchell Chaffee. So they're promoting from within, finding guys in Syracuse that can play at the NHL level. Florida, to me, is at their best when they can rob you of time and space. They like to play the game in a very condensed space. Make you play in a circle. Frustrate the hell out of you. That is when they're at their best. That's when they are at their happiest. That's when they win the majority of the time, is when you are put into a box and you can't escape. They played the Leafs early March, and it was a game where the Leafs' best players were just nowhere to be seen. And Florida looked like the Florida Panthers because they were just big and physical, and they pushed them off pucks, and Toronto didn't have an answer. And they looked small and weak in that game, and they had nothing going for them, nothing, no pushback, just nothing. That is when they're at their best. That's when Florida truly is the Panthers. Florida's looking to do this year what Tampa did. Not only win, back-to-back, but get to 3 straight Stanley Cup finals. Tampa did it. They lost the third time around, but they got there. Very hard to do. Florida's definitely tired, going in more tired than everybody else in these playoffs for good reason. Because they play more hockey than everybody else over the last couple of years. I think this is going to be a physical series. These two teams hate one another. They played on Tuesday. You're already starting to feel it. This series does not start until Tuesday. Real long wait time. Not really sure why. Oh, just to mention, Leafs Sens first game is Sunday at 8. Game 1, Montreal, Washington is Monday at 8, I believe. So that's when those two series. This Lightning Panthers is Tuesday night, game 1. This is going to be great hockey, this series. Great hockey. Physical, two teams that know each other very well. For the season, I had Florida and I had Dallas in the Stanley Cup final. I'm not confident about either one anymore. Because a lot's changed. Florida's lost 3 of the last 4 going into the playoffs. We're going to talk Dallas. They've lost 7 in a row. Does it mean anything? Doesn't have to. Can Tkachuk play well? Can Marchand contribute at this age? What does Bennett have left in the tank? What's he dealing? What kind of injury is he dealing with? Verhaeghe, Reinhart, can he continue to pot them in. No Bjorkstrand for Tampa for the start of the series. He's banged up. All question marks. You have Vasilevsky against Bobrovsky. Two Russian goalies. Vasilevsky's having a bounce-back season where he's been phenomenal. If he turns back the clock and he's Vasilevsky of old, Tampa's got a shot to go very far. Because to me, he's at his best. He's right up there with Hellebuck for the best goalie in the league, and he's proven it more than Hellebuck. This was a tough one, and again, I don't have great confidence in this pick because it's the first two. I think those two teams will win, and I don't have a whole lot of question about it. This one, not so much. I'm taking the Florida Panthers in 7 games. But absolutely, Tampa can win this series. On FanDuel, Panthers minus 118, Tampa minus 102. So Florida is the slight favorite in this series, which is interesting. Yeah, I think the books are looking at this going, this is close. It went 5 games last year. It's not going to go 5 this year. I don't see it being a shellacking either way. A back-and-forth affair that easily could be the best first-round series, bar none. But I got Florida beating Tampa for the second straight year in 7 games. To wrap up the Eastern Conference, Carolina, New Jersey. I feel like this is the series that everybody's just like, oh yeah, there's that other series in the East that doesn't involve a Canadian team or doesn't involve, two teams that we know so well because they're always playing into June. Carolina had Mikko Rantanen on their team at one point, had Marty Necas on their team. They don't anymore. They have Logan Stankoven, who I like. They still have Freddie Anderson and Ketchkov in between the pipes. Not thrilled about that. Carolina is Carolina, and I'm not going to expect them to change their identity or change how they do business because, in fairness to them, they are quite successful. They are always in the playoffs. They always are competitive in the Metropolitan Division. That sucks. And they're always there. You know what you're going to get from Brent Burns, even pushing 40. You know that my guy Slavin's going to be the best defensive defenseman in the league. You know that Orlov's going to cheat sometimes and look bad. Gostisbehere's going to be good in the power play. They got a solid team. Svechnikov, Stahl, Kotkaniemi, Martinook, Roslovic, Seth Jarvis, Sebastian Aho. A real solid group with Stankoven thrown in the mix. Solid team that can play. And oddly enough, with their path where they'll play the winner of, if they win the series, the winner of Washington or Montreal, they easily could get back to the conference final. They easily could, which is funny because they were in the conference final last year and they very well could get back again. Despite the fact that I don't love their roster makeup and I don't love that they never get a goalie that you trust, but they go far. But they always go far and never win, so there could be something there. They get the New Jersey Devils, who've had a interesting year. First year with Sheldon Keefe, back in the playoffs, so check mark there. Jack Hughes has been banged up seemingly all year. Then he gets a real serious injury, needs surgery, out for the year. Their most important player. Woof. But they still managed to make the playoffs in large part because the Metropolitan Division was so terrible. They had Markstrom out for a decent stretch. They had to rely on backup goalies, but they're here. Dougie Hamilton is back for the playoffs. Didn't think he would be. They get him back. Positive for the group. Luke Hughes, Pesce, Siegenthaler, Brendan Dillon. Big defense. Some mean guys in the back end. You got Jesper Bratt, Nico Hischier, who had a pretty solid year. Timo Meier, Andre Palat. It's a solid team, but you're missing, you don't see Jack Hughes on the lineup sheet. It scares you a little bit. I still think New Jersey's a small team. I've said this in the past. I still look at them and go, I wouldn't be scared of this team. I don't see a team that's going to jump out at me and go, okay, that's scary business. With Jack Hughes, I think they'd have a shot. But the way that Carolina likes to play, close off the ice, when you have guys like Stahl and Martinook, Kotkaniemi, that just eliminate time and space and like to frustrate the opposition, I think it's frustrating for a team like New Jersey. This one could be the shortest series, potentially, but I think New Jersey can get a couple off Carolina. I'm going to go Carolina in 6. But I don't think there's many ways New Jersey can win this series. I think this series will have the worst ratings out of any of them because I just don't think people really care about these two teams. I'm going to watch the game. You get Sunday afternoon, 4 o'clock, game 1. I'm happy about that. Something to do. Sunday afternoon, watch that. And Hilton at the RBC Heritage. On FanDuel, Carolina is a minus 280 favorite. You can get the Devils right now at plus 225. So the book's heavy favorites on Carolina. And if you look, the Carolina Hurricanes are the favorite to represent the Eastern Conference in the Stanley Cup playoffs. I think in large part that's because of their path, and also they could have some easier games. Followed by Florida at plus 360, Tampa plus 460, Washington plus 470, and you have Toronto at plus 650, which is interesting that they're not higher to me. Because typically they're up there even if the team sucks, because the books like to put them up there. Okay, that's the East. The East first round. Let's go to Winnipeg. The first game of the 2025 Stanley Cup Playoffs will be between the Winnipeg Jets and the St. Louis Blues tomorrow night at 7 p.m. from Winnipeg. Should be a whiteout game. Always a great atmosphere in there. Winnipeg, the President's Trophy winners. Winnipeg, fantastic year. Scott Arniel takes over for Rick Bowness. Might win Coach of the Year. Scheifele nearly gets to 40 goals. Awesome season. Career year for Cole Perfetti. Career year for Gabe Vilardi. Career year for Kyle Connor. Neil Pionk gets a 6-year, $7 million per year deal yesterday on an extension prior to his free agency. So they keep him. Connor Hellebuck is going to win his third straight Vezina Trophy. He's also going to win the Hart Trophy, in my humble opinion. Probably won't, but he should. They just had an awesome year. Great start. They rode it from there. They're top in the West, and they draw the second wild card, the St. Louis Blues. St. Louis was nowhere to be seen, and then they caught fire. Late February to early April, they were the hottest, they were the best team in the league. Zachary Bolduc, Rob Thomas, Jake Neighbors, Dylan Holloway, Philip Broberg, and the play of Jordan Binnington really carried this team into the playoffs. A season where early in the year they fired Drew Bannister and brought over Jim Montgomery, who got fired from the Boston Bruins, and Jim Montgomery from the St. Louis area. They wanted him. They identified him. He comes in. They make the playoffs. I didn't think they would. I didn't see it for St. Louis. I go, okay, this is a team that's likely going to be rebuilding. It's another year. They have some good talent, but here we are. They're in the playoffs. In this series, you get Braden Shen against Luke Shen. Always fun. You get two teams that know each other quite well. In the same division, a lot of wars. They played each other in the past. You get a St. Louis team that, is riding high, feeling a lot of confidence, nothing to lose, against a Jets team that really, to me, feel like they have to win this series, feel like they have to have an awesome playoffs, finally, to justify, their model, what they've done over the last number of years, where they stick with Hellebuck, they stick with Scheifele, they hire Arneal, who was on the staff of Rick Bowness. Nick Ehlers is still on this team. I mean, it's a lot of the same players that they're riding with, hoping for an awesome spring that will result in a Stanley Cup. Now, they finished first. I'd much rather be in the position of Vegas and be playing the Minnesota Wild because St. Louis is a tougher team. St. Louis has more ways that they can beat you. And I just think overall they're a better team. Rob Thomas is a gamer. To me, he's the de facto captain of this team. He just breathes playing hard, playing good hockey, a playoff guy. Neighbors, I think, will be even a better player come this time of year. Holloway's been awesome. Zachary Bolduc, who was a Q guy that got took, and he's jumped on the scene. They got Jimmy Snuggerud, who comes over from the University of Minnesota that could be playing in the playoffs, that could be making an impact. Parayko, Broberg, Leddy, Falk, Fowler, Suter, a veteran defense. Binnington, who's won a Stanley Cup, who won at the Four Nations with Canada, has been really good ever since. No cakewalk for Winnipeg. Oh, and by the way, they don't have Nick Ehlers to start the series. Hurt his foot. He's out week to week. Will miss at least the first couple games of this series. That's a big miss. For Winnipeg, it's always been, yes, I love their top line. They might have the best top line in hockey with Connors, Velarde, and Mark Scheifele. It's hard to match it. If you watch them regularly, how smart they are, how skilled they are in their own zone, going the other way, it's hard to beat them, truly. How does Appleton play? Barron, Iafallo, Kupari. They need the guys in the regular season to score a goal, need a writer to show up and continue to do it. Play those four lines, get everybody to contribute, get some scoring from your back end, from Morrissey, from Pionk, and ultimately for Connor Hellebuyck to finally play well in a Stanley Cup playoffs. Because it truly hasn't happened. In the first round last year against Colorado, he averaged 6 goals against per start. You're not going to beat anybody. You're not beating the Washington Bullets with those type of numbers. These two goalies met in the final of the Four Nations. Binnington was on the winning side playing on Team Canada, and he made some incredible saves to help Canada win the Four Nations. A rivalry in between the pipes, absolutely. Bragging rights. St. Louis beat Winnipeg the year St. Louis went on to win the Stanley Cup in the first round as a betting underdog. I really like the Jets. I do. But St. Louis is no small task. Ken Bolduc, Ken Faxa, Holloway, Neighbors, some of these younger guys, can they produce to the level that the depth scoring of Winnipeg does? To me, that's the series. Because I think if you look Scheifele, Velarde, they can cancel out Thomas, Kyrou, Shen, the top-end guys for St. Louis. How does the depth of Winnipeg play against the depth of St. Louis? Third and fourth line scoring will dictate this series to me. And St. Louis has a lot of young guys. That can be a positive or a negative, depending on how you look at it, depending how their sphincters are when the series starts and when the going gets tough, can you deal with it? How do you react to the pressure? How do you battle through that? This is an awesome series to get in round one. Winnipeg, the best team all year. Against St. Louis, the best team in basically the last 2 months of the season. St. Louis didn't go on a run that they did in 19 where they ultimately won, where they were the worst team in January and then became the best team. But going from nowhere to getting to the playoffs and then drawing Winnipeg just like they did in 19, there are some correlations. Binnington was the goalie that year, and they won. This starts tomorrow night in Winnipeg. Right now, the Winnipeg Jets are a minus 225 favorite on FanDuel Sportsbook. You can get St. Louis at plus 184. St. Louis will keep it close. I think the games will be tight. The Western Conference is just, it's a gauntlet. Much more difficult than the East. And I don't even think that's really an opinion. It's just a fact. But nevertheless, I have the Winnipeg Jets beating St. Louis in 6 games. Hard-fought series, but the Jets come out the other side. Great regular season. They validate it here in the first round, and they await the winner of Dallas and Colorado. And before we talk about Edmonton, let's go to Dallas and Colorado. The most interesting, the best series of the first round to me. Dallas, Colorado. Dallas has lost 7 straight going into the playoffs. Unprecedented. Never happened for a playoff team. They've lost 7 in a row, yet they will have home ice in the first round. Which, again, interesting. Dallas will not have Miro Heiskanen in the first round. Their best defenseman. One of their best players. You could argue their best player. Jason Robertson got hurt on Wednesday night. He walked out in a knee brace. Doesn't sound like he's going to be able to play game 1. That's not great. Tyler Seguin returned from hip surgery, his first game since November, But how good is he going to be? Who the hell knows? Without Heiskanen, the defense is Ceci, Thomas Harley, Esa Lindell, Labushkin, Dumba, and Leon Bichel, who's a big Swiss defenseman who I like a lot. Not having Heiskanen kills because he's so good and he logs so many minutes. And the way it sounds is he's going to miss the entirety of the first round, if not more, of the Stanley Cup playoffs. Woof. Now, Dallas did get Mikko Rantanen. Mikko Rantanen, who started the year in Colorado, then got traded to Carolina, then gets traded to Dallas, will now play Colorado in the first round of the playoffs. That is something else. You can't draw that up. I mean, that's, pardon my French, fucking crazy. Mikko Rantanen playing his old team. I'm sure he'll be motivated. But then you have Colorado. Lost 4 or 5. No McKinnon in the last 5 games. Banged up. Gabriel Landeskog plays 2 games in the AHL. Hasn't played in 3 years. Sounds like he's going to be playing in the playoffs. What a story. Perseverance from him. Way to go. Colorado, they have a great team. Makar, Taves, Manson on the back end. Ryan Lindgren, another pickup I loved. I mean, their deadline was active, getting Charlie Coyle, Jack Drury, Nick Cash, Brock Nelson. They switched their team up. Completely redid it on the fly, hoping that they can go on a run. They draw Dallas. Colorado is so fast when they're healthy that they make your head spin. And I think there's 3 or 4 teams in the West that are better than any team in the East. These two are 2 of those teams. Makar is so fun to watch. So is McKinnon. I think they want to win every year, these guys, but they haven't won in a while. McKinnon won some individual hardware. Makar is going to win likely the Norris this year. But I mean, they want Stanley Cups. They want to add to their trophy case. Dallas has been a really good team for a long time. They blended old players with new players on the come-up. They still are doing it with guys like Maverick Bourque, Rupe Hintz, Wyatt Johnson, who was promoted from within. Leon Bichel was a 3rd-round draft pick. So they continued to do it, even though they had to move out guys like Logan Stankoven to get Mikko Rantanen to join the team. Rantanen's got to be good. And I think he will be, because I think he really wants to beat Colorado with that blindside trade. Beat your old team. Show them where they can stick it, if you will. Up yours to the Colorado Avalanche. Up yours to Joe Sakic and Chris McFarland. The books, logic, all tell you to take Colorado. And I don't disagree with the books or logic that Colorado seems like the favorite, seems like the team that's more likely to win currently. But, Dallas just wins. They do. And they have a lot of playoff experience, and they haven't won a cup, but they've been to a cup final, and they're always there. And they may be the San Jose Sharks of this generation. And they did have little Joe Pavelski on the team for a time, so it makes some sense. But even without Heiskanen and 7 losses in a row, and Jake Ottinger and poor defending down the stretch, I'm taking Dallas. I'm taking Dallas in 7 games over Colorado. I expect this to be the best series of the opening round. I think it's going to be thrilling. These two teams meeting in the first round is crazy because they're both phenomenal. But somebody's got to go, and I think Dallas will score big goals. Find a way. Roope Hintz has been a playoff performer. Michael Granlund's a sneaky, just good player. Duchesne, another awesome year. Dadonov's been good in the play. He was good for Montreal when they got to the bubble final. And I think Rantanen's going to be motivated. Ottinger needs to make saves. I'm not saying Dallas will win the cup because I had them go into the cup final before the season began. I don't know if that'll happen. This series might take everything out of them, and vice versa if Colorado wins. But I got Dallas winning in 7 games, and you can get them right now plus 126 on FanDuel. They are the home dog. With home ice advantage, they are an underdog currently. You can get them plus money on FanDuel. 2 series left, everybody. Let's go. The Edmonton Oilers playing the Los Angeles Kings. For the 4th year in a row, Edmonton has won the first 3. But it doesn't smell right in Edmonton, and that's not just because of the crazy drug usage and garbage everywhere, which it also has. This team that was in the Stanley Cup final last year, a game away from winning, you felt it, so close. Let's bring everybody back and do the same thing next year. Well, they made the playoffs, so check there. But also, you look up and go, well, God, I just don't feel as confident in this team. I feel weird about them. Why don't I feel great about the Edmonton Oilers? Sure, Connor McDavid's there and still there, and he had 100 points again. And Leon Draisaitl won the Rocket Richard Trophy. But I look up and go, no Matthias Ekholm. Injured, could be out for the entirety of the playoffs. That's not just that's a massive loss. That can destroy your season. A team that their team defense is not all that great, and then you take Ekholm off the ice and you're left with Evan Bouchard, Troy Stetcher, Jake Wallman, Darnell Nurse, Troy Emberson, and Brett Kulak. Because it is Passover, oy vey. I mean, that doesn't scream I'm thrilled. It doesn't scream that's going to take you 4 rounds, 16 wins. Evander Kane will play his first game of the year in the playoffs. That's always a worry. Corey Perry, good season, but older guy. Janmark, older guy. Henrique. Arvidsson's had a disaster of a year. Can't skate anymore. It's too bad. Stuart Skinner's played 2 games in the last couple months. Trent Fredericks played one game as an Oiler. He can't stand his high ankle sprain. He can't get on the ice. McDavid, Draisaitl, both banged up going into the playoffs. I mean, I could find a compliment somewhere for this team, but it's going to take me a minute. And then you have LA, the best home ice team in the NHL this year. They lost 6 times on home ice all season long. They love playing at the Crypt, thecrypto.com. And they are, to the untrained eye, they are certainly a boring team. They play a version of the trap. They eliminate time and space, They forecheck extremely hard, north-south, and they wear you down. They take your will away from you. And I think in the past, they've given the Oilers stars too much space. And I think they've learned that that's the wrong way to go, and they want to change the way that they've done things. Their defense are big. They're all got big sticks and like to make things difficult. Mikey Anderson, Doughty, Edmondson, Gavrikov, all loads in front of the net. You have guys like Byfield, Philip Deneau, Fogle, Jeannot, Kopitar, Trevor Lewis. Physical team, veterans who have been there, done that. I mean, Kopitar was on the Stanley Cup winning team. So was Trevor Lewis. So they still have guys that were there. Deneau has a lot of playoff experience. I like the Kings. Now, do they have... You could look at them and go, they don't have a superstar. They don't have high-end talent, you could argue. Okay, sure. Edmonton's best players are better than LA's, absolutely. Stuart Skinner was awesome in the playoffs last year. Could he be awesome again? Yes. But LA, Darcy Kemper's had a good year. Darcy Kemper, the trade that sent Darcy Kemper to LA and sent Pierre-Luc Dubois to Washington worked out for both sides. They both got what they wanted out of the deal. Darcy Kemper solidified LA in net. PLD had a good season for the East winning Caps. If Connor and Leon can go Hercules, then Edmonton can win this series. But they had to do it last year, and I don't know if they can do it again. It's tough. It's hard to beat the same team 4 years in a row, 4 out of 7. I got the Los Angeles Kings beating the Oilers this time around, advancing to the second round of the Stanley Cup playoffs, and the Oilers getting bounced in the first, which will be a tough pill to swallow for that team, for McDavid, Draisaitl, and everybody. McDavid eligible to sign an extension this summer. He'll have 1 year left on his deal. Oilers are still the favorite on FanDuel, -132. I would jump on the Kings at +110 because I think they will break through, finally. And I think the Kings, I got Kings in 6. I think the Kings are going to face Vegas in the second round. To me, the team that doesn't get the look, that doesn't get the respect, doesn't get the talk out of all these teams, is the Vegas Golden Knights. Quietly won the Pacific. quietly go about their business, quietly have just, a monster defense core and Haig and Hannafin and McNabb and Petrangelo and Whitecloud and Theodore. Quietly had a career year from Jack Eichel, career year from Dorofeyev, 35 goals. From Brett Howden, Thomas Hertl, yeah, he's on Vegas, remember him, he used to play for the Sharks. Nick Roy, Mark Stone, Barbashev, Aiden Hill, pretty solid in net. I really like this team. And I think they're dangerous, and I think they will sneak up on people. 100%. Minnesota, for them to make the playoffs with their cap situation and just, Kaprizov missing over 2 months and Zuccarello missing time and Eriksson Ek being out, kudos to them. Kudos to Bill Guerin for building a pretty solid roster with all the restrictions that they have after the buyouts of Ryan Suter and Zach Parise. Boldy, Ek, Kaprizov, Zuccarello, Marco Rossi. Great year from him. I think they got a really bright – I love their future of you're going to have Brodin, who's a defensive defenseman, Brock Faber, my guy, future Norris winner, Spurgeon, great when healthy. Then you have Zeev Byam, who they just signed. He was the captain of the University of Denver. He won a national championship, was in the Final Four this year. He's great, has won back-to-back gold medals at the World Juniors. They got a bright future, I think. They got some good players coming. It's a little too soon for me. They got to re-sign Kaprizov this summer. But I like what they're doing. And when they have some flexibility with the cap, they'll be even more interesting. Just will not be right now. I got Vegas in 5. Vegas is too big, too much scoring. They have game breakers, 4 lines. Vegas could go very far. Before the season, I had Dallas and Florida meeting in the Stanley Cup final. Both teams still could. They've made the dance. I'm going to stick with that because it's what I picked from the beginning, and I don't like to back off of it. But if I could get a redo, and reset and make one today based on the information I have and where teams look going into the playoffs, and if I had to put 2 teams on FanDuel and who I really liked and who I thought could go win it all, this is what I would do. I would say that it would be Vegas and the Toronto Maple Leafs meeting in the Stanley Cup final. That would be my choice, and I'd have Vegas winning it. I like the paths, and I like the teams. I think they can survive the push. Will it happen that way? Remains to be seen. But if I could have my pick originally from the beginning of the year, Dallas, Florida, if I could do a redo today based on the information that I know that I have that I picked up over the year, it would be Vegas, Toronto in the Stanley Cup final. It all starts tomorrow. The NBA playoffs start tomorrow. We'll talk Monday about the results, the games, preview some game ones of the remaining series that will get going. Also talk some NBA. We got NFL draft next week. Live from Green Bay. I love the draft. I love the draft. So we will get into that as well. Thanks for hanging out today. Have a great rest of your Easter/Passover weekends. Until Monday, take care, stay healthy. I'm your host, Noah Warren, and this is the Live and Learn podcast.